I'm Tobias from Astralis, and welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel. It's a joke-free zone.
Right, this is going to be episode 72 of Counterpoints. And for absolutely no reason, apropos of nothing, I will now introduce all the people on the show. So this is a real show. So my usual co-host, glad to be with him for all the years. I don't know why I'm doing it like it's actually a serious thing. You know, like, it's, of course, Jason Moses O'Toole, the bald eagle himself. There he is. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. He correctly actually betrayed Team Liquid at this one, even though every metric possible said they should win. He tried to go against them. That's Jason Moses O'Toole for you. Right, on to the guests for this week's episode. So bizarrely, I'm going to start in the bottom left, even though that doesn't make sense. I always go clockwise, but I will for this one. So in the bottom left, we've got Davey, former CSGO player, used to play for Splyce. I'm running out of stuff to say for him, but he's here now, and that's great. So welcome to the show.
Available for analyst desks around the world.
Yes,
true.
Exactly.
He's got a Canadian passport, well loved in every country.
That's also true. I even have a Chinese visa. Probably won't go, but I have one.
Nice.
And also worth pointing out, because this is actually a selling point if you're an analyst, since he does a podcast, you know he knows how to fill. That's actually a fucking selling point nowadays. That is.
Is it? Is it?
Yeah, mate.
Definitely is, mate. Definitely is.
Dead air.
I've been solo casting games for the last few days, so I'm getting really good at it.
Oh, bless your heart.
I know. So I've been getting better and better at it.
Right. Anyway, to continue and indeed conclude this introduction phase of the show, I'd just like to say our last person is Chad SPUNJ Birchall. So, hello, Chad, former in-game leader of Renegades, now world-class analyst on events. How are you?
Yeah. Look, obviously my attire this evening, you can see the blast. How we've obviously got the E-League on. We're gearing up for war in 2020, guys. And I don't know if everybody was out here, was ready for it, but I'm just making sure everyone knows. You know, we're obviously going to war, and we all want to pick sides. So, you know, I'm just showing I'm supporting everybody. I'm here for...
Keep going.
I'm here for... Hold up, sorry.
This is so ridiculous.
Hello?
This is so ridiculous.
Why is it the red phone from the Oval Office?
Because he's done it on purpose, right? Just let him do this. Let him work.
Yeah, wait, sorry, mate. It won't happen again. Sorry, mate. What? Shit. 1 second, guys. Hold up.
Oh, I wonder what could be on under here. Oh, no,
no.
I never saw it coming. The heel turn. I never saw it coming.
All right, sorry. Yeah, that was...
Right, there you go, the boss. Yeah,
that was Ralph, so fucking hell, all right. Now, honestly, let me take the shirt off before people honestly think that this is a real skit. There was a red phone involved. I had a fucking phone call thing coming in. It's all come together. You guys keep talking. I'm just going to change my shirt. We'll do it off so it doesn't get taken off.
Right,
I thought that worked out pretty well, all things considered. I think that's going to land really well with you.
I can't lie, I did think at the end there was like a third one coming in, and like underneath there it was like some fucking, it was just like a mystery logo of some NA teams, like, and a third option. Ooh.
If that was like, if that was Chad's way of being hired to do like the publicity announcement of the new league that's going to be forming, of the NA franchise league, that would have been brilliant. That would have been gold.
Well, that's why I had the E-League thing on. You know, I'm repping like the corporate companies that come in for 2 years and spend a lot of money and leave. And then I was repping, you know, obviously Blast. And then,
there you go.
I had a Star Series shirt, but I figured we couldn't do 2 shirts. I didn't know what else.
Plus, they've been around too long, so
I covered as many bases as I possibly could there. So I hope it landed. I hope you like the phone. The phone's a new little prop.
The phone got me. That was good.
Yeah, it'll be traveling the world with me. You got there's other props coming soon, Jason. So keep your fucking eyes on,
man. So you're going to be the prop guy now.
He's going to be the carrot top of esports.
You're just going to roll in. You're going to have a bunch of props with you from under the desk, phones coming out.
I thought the prop guy was James Bardolph, where you have like one person who just perpetually props you up, and you're oh shit, you meant a prop like a thing. My bad. Sorry guys, like I took that the wrong way. So anyway, since we are running at a shorter time schedule than something, that happened. So and now you are all co-signed that by just appearing on the same room. I believe that's
officially unco-signed.
That is how the rules work, I believe. So anyway. So you know, like, notice I just spring that on them once the show's already live. But anyway, so let's just cut straight through all the bullshit, right? Listen, mate. A lot of people can cross ECS off the list once 2020 comes. But anyway, enough of that. In fact, if you just half the teams who are in World Counter-Strike at the moment cross them off the list, apparently everyone did. Well, the fuck's in the league? Where's Navi? Where's everyone else? There's no one in the league. There's about 4 teams. And then everyone from Poland that still plays Counter-Strike. But not the really good legendary players. So anyway, my point was, we've got to skip past all this banter and start the show. So here's the thing, Davey. We're not fucking around on this episode. This one's not just like, oh, it's a comedy show show where we just talk about things about? No, we're going deep on this one. So here's a question for you, Davey.
All right.
Right? Before the major, one of the interesting discussions obviously is this Team Liquid's era? Because the question is, if they win, it basically doesn't even need to be asked, does it? Like if you win a major and all the events before and you go on this insane streak, it's pretty much a done deal there. But obviously, most people were wondering what happens if they lose it, though. Now, what people didn't think also was what happens if Astralis is then the team that wins it. That's the third kind of angle to that. So, since this is something which I'll just give you the preface that there are no rules on the internet for eras. Like, I know because I actually am the person who came up with the term. Now, not literally, obviously, it existed in every other fucking sport, etc. Just in Counter-Strike, we didn't use it. For people who don't know, what we used to do in Counter-Strike, what was bizarre was, it was just you were the team of the year. Like, you wait until the end of the year, you saw who won the most tournaments, or you average who won the most majors, and you just say they're the team of the year. But that's not actually that useful, because obviously someone's period of dominance usually doesn't run within an exact calendar year. And as we saw with Astralis, sometimes it extends. So what I'm basically saying is there are no rules. A lot of this is going to be subjective, but that's obviously where we can get into the discussion. So for you, Davey, now that Team Liquid did not win the major, they didn't even actually come close, because obviously, unfortunately for them, they lost to Astralis in the first round of the playoffs. So they get that 5th to 8th on the old Wikipedia. It doesn't matter whether you think they were the second or third best. There was no lower bracket in this tournament, mate. So for you, where do you come down on this one?
I don't even think you can say Liquid's out of their era at this point. They've lost one tournament. Like they didn't win one tournament. In the grand scheme of things, that's what happened here. Right after a player break, they lost one event to Astralis, like you said, in the quarterfinals, unlucky draw, and it was right after a player break. If this event happens before the player break, they win this major, and this isn't even a discussion that's being had, just like you said. I think the post player break major fucked them. And because of that, I think we still need to wait until the end of the year, or at least the next few events, to see if Liquid is actually falling off at this point. Because just having a bad placing at one event isn't enough to say, oh, Liquid didn't have an era, they didn't do anything. They won the Grand Slam faster than anybody ever. They won however many events in a row over a 3-month period. It was fucking ridiculous.
Okay, one last thing to clarify your position is, so what you're basically saying at the moment is like, maybe they win the next events, the era's still going, it's fine, you didn't win the one tournament, which unfortunately, it did happen to be a major, but whatever. If you win every other tournament, I think logically you can have an era. Here's the question then, just to clarify your position. If they didn't win any other tournaments, like let's say for whatever reason, they're just done, or everyone else gets amazing, maybe NRG's the new squad, maybe the new Navi's super sick, right? If they didn't win any others, would this count as an era for you?
Well, yeah, I guess that's where it gets a little bit sticky, because it was almost too short to count it as an era, like their domination period. It was almost too short. I'm operating under the assumption that they're going to be back. So I guess if they don't win any more events from now on till the end, I think they go down as like one of the most skilled lineups of all time to probably not have an era, because
if you want to liken it to like a team who had like a meteoric rise that was quite skill based, I think you look at the phase of 2017, right, Duncan? Like the New York, when around that period they won a lot of tournaments. Now, obviously these goalposts are constantly shifting every year, so the goalposts now have shifted. Last year, Astralis are the ones who set the bar. We always talk about this. They basically had the entire year of domination, right? That was basically the story of the whole year. Now, when we're fucking, I don't know what's going on with Davies.
We'll figure that out.
We're all over the place.
I'm fixing it.
Fucking Canadians.
We're
sorry about that. It's fixed now. It kept falling down.
Sized up all the heads and shit. Now he's got to.
No, it should be good. It should still be good.
Keep going.
The goalposts are constantly shifting, right? So how long was it that Liquid were in that dominant phase, right? So is where we're talking after the major, and then up until Cologne, and then the player break happened. So what are we saying? 4 months? I would have to actually look at some dates.
I think it would be about 4 months, yeah.
So here's the problem we have. As you said, the definition, there isn't one. But the definition of the actual word is a long and distinct period of history. Well, 4 months in the realms of a 20-year-old game. Obviously, CSGO hasn't been out for 20 years. But it's like you're saying, back in the 1.6 days, you would say it's someone's era because the majors or the bigger events came around so infrequently that if they were able to pick up 3 out of the 4 for the year or whatever the fuck it was, then obviously it was their year. But Liquid had a period of domination that was nobody. They still had some close games, but it was almost like nobody could touch them for that 4-month stint. That's obviously subsided, and exactly like Davey said, off the back of the player break. But if they continue in the same trajectory and they don't find that form that they had before, then I couldn't say they had an era. I don't know. I could say that they were dominant for 4 months, but I want to use, like, obviously our language is constantly going to evolve, and different players and teams are going to fall into different categories of the greatest or the best or good or whatever as everything changes. Like next year, we might find ourselves in a period of time where Astralis and Liquid only meet every 3 months, right? That's a real possibility in the world that we live in where that might happen. So then how do we define eras going forward? Like, I think it's such a unique thing to define. It's just, I'm with Davey, unless they have a good form for the rest of the year, it doesn't feel like they've achieved enough over a long period of time to be categorized in an era.
Yeah,
they just got fucked. They just got fucked after the player break. Like, there was the player break, and then they go to the major, and then they play Astralis in the quarterfinals. If they're on the other side of the bracket, then they're playing Astralis in the finals, and we're still not having this discussion because they made another final, right? Even if they make the semifinal, like they really just got.
No, the thing is, Davey, that to set this up, because Moses is already, me and him have had this discussion obviously in the past episodes, and if people don't know, he already was on the position that it's not an era yet, that they should win the majors to cement it, etc. So I will say this, when I argued against that to Moses before and said it was already an era, I will say that is also because if you think of the form that Team Liquid was in the summer, listen, even if they didn't win the major, they were at least going to come, second, top 4, like, it was inconceivable that they were going to lose 5th to 8th. So I will say that in a way has made me have to take stock itself, because the problem is their result of the major basically was almost meaningless. Like, in the context of what they were going for, that's nothing. Like again, at least to finals, I think, or top 4 you need if you want to keep that story going, that like, oh, we were still, because that way, here's the thing, if you lose in the final to Astralis, you could use the logic. This is one of the things I came up with as like a secondary way of defining eras. You could be like, well, it's technically still my era because it was more that you beat me and stopped me from winning the tournament rather than you won the tournament, if you know what I mean. But I don't know if that works in the 5th to 8th. I don't think so. I think that's pushing it too far. And the problem is, even though I think that you can make an argument that it is their era, I'm actually willing to concede perhaps it isn't and they have to win more tournaments first, because the problem is, like, I do want it to be a really hard accomplishment to do. I don't think it should be something you can just, whatever, you sort of did it, that's fine. Like, no, like the whole reason why we were so harsh to FaZe, because think about what everyone's basically said to FaZe Clan, is like, oh yeah, those like 3 or 4 tournaments you won in like 1 million seconds and top 4s, like, yeah, actually we're just going to look at the fact you didn't win the other tournaments and say that you weren't good enough, actually, which is what you should do, because the whole point is they're going for that, like, greatest team ever. You're not just going for good team. Obviously they were a brilliant team. So come on, Moses, what are your thoughts on this one? You got any different angle on it or something?
Well, I mean, you already kind of outlined it. I didn't think that Liquid was in an era even before the major. I thought they had to win it. And I think that's the problem with there were so many people heralding in this era of NA, an era of Liquid, that like it felt like everyone wanted to be the first person to say it, to crown Liquid as having an era. And these things, like looking back on it, it's obviously easy to look now and say, they haven't established an era because of the time frame, but none of those are considered, for the major when that's brought up. I think my biggest thing is trying to define what an era could be. And, in one sense that I've kind of tried to think of, one kind of factor that always comes into it for me is, has this team accomplished something that hasn't been done before? Like, have they actually done something that no other squad has actually performed? And for Liquid, it's only winning the Grand Slam in four events. Astralis obviously had that year domination, and they revolutionized the way that utility is used and the way that rotations and everything are used and the way that they play the game. If you look back at all those teams that we've given an era, would it be the original NIP with just their dominant run? I guess it'd be 2015 Fnatic. We count MIBR 2016 as like the Brazilian era, but even that, if you look at it,
they didn't win 2 majors though. That's the problem.
Yeah, but that's the problem. They won nothing else, which to me is like, how can that possibly be an era? And I think there's just way too many shitty definitions of how we're going to establish which teams have an era. And we're going to get to the point, and it's already starting to get there, where the term era as it defines a team in a time span of that squad is as pointless as calling a player legendary, because everyone likes to call a player legendary. And if we do that to era, then it loses all the meaning to the teams who actually deserved it, like the Fnatics, like the NIP. So we need a harsher criteria to establish eras than what we've given Liquid in these 4 months and what we've given MIBR in 2016, in my opinion.
Do we just quickly on this though, like the definition of era, we're using it to talk about like obviously a team being dominant over a period of time. Yes. But what we like when we talk about the MIBR one, when I think about MIBR, sure, they won both majors, but what they did for Counter-Strike from my perspective is really being put to the forefront of theory, right? Of sitting down and actually going through all the different scenarios. So like when I talk about the SK era or whatever, the Brazilian era, if we just want to label it as that, of when they were winning the events, then I'm also bringing in the play style that they changed. When I talk about the Astralis era, I'm not just thinking about them just winning all the tournaments. It's the fashion in which they did it, how they elevated the play. So Liquid, when they were winning everything, obviously Astralis emissions of several events, but when they were winning everything, what they were doing was they were taking the finesse of Astralis, they had the mid-round of MIBR, and they had the individual skill of FaZe, and they just merged all three of those things together, and they were just fucking marauders, just rolling around destroying. Now, we obviously see Astralis when they're at peak form and all their individuals, that's the same way they look. But Liquid looked that way every single event that they played in other than this last one. And that was, I guess, mainly because of the individual fall off. I agree with you, Jason, in terms of, we need to make sure that we're not throwing these terms around willy-nilly. It's going to happen. It obviously, like we're still talking about players who should have retired some time ago as if they're the greats of the game. That's the fucking narrative that we have to spin on the desk. Oh, he used to be a great player. If we're going to talk about it realistically, what we should be saying is, this guy is just going to contribute as an experienced member, which we also do clarify. But what people are pushing for and the narratives here is obviously these fucking buzzwords. And because we have events every second week, it all just gets constantly rehashed.
What about this then? I'll give you some pushback. Here's a couple of angles. This is open to anyone. Just tell me what you think. Right. So there's two things. The problem is when you use any of these definitions, like when you said that angle there, like what, it was only like 4 months. That makes it sound like not very long, right? 4 months. If you win fucking I think it was 6 out of 7 tournaments in a 4-month span. Like, there's not a lot of people play that many tournaments even. Like, that was a very busy period. That was the summer. And playing all of it. And not only did they win 6 out of 7 titles, they had that insane streak. Like, if you want to talk about something no one's done, I'm going to go and check this, but I don't think even NiP did like 25 series in a row or whatever. Because even NiP, I think they played something like, I think it was their 10th LAN that they lost, but some of those LANs were smaller ones where you play like 2 best of 3. So, if I had to guess, that might even be a record in Counter-Strike. I think I'd be more impressed with a run of like 20 series wins over a longer period of time than the 25 series wins over 4 months. Because we see teams hit those heaters for 2 to 3 months all the time, especially if you get, like, maybe not all the time, but we see it frequently. And, especially with like a team that forms, we've seen teams go on like 2 to 3 month honeymoon periods where they're just dominant. That was the big thing about that FaZe lineup when it came together with Kerrigan, was just the way they steamrolled everyone across 2 to 3 months. And the other thing about having such a short time span to judge Liquid's era on is that's not a whole lot of time. And especially during the busy period, as you said, to play devil advocate to that point, other teams that have roster issues or that made roster changes or have issues with their gameplay.
We're losing him. He's getting too heated.
He started thinking about teams and roster issues.
Do you want a couple of minutes, Jason?
He started thinking about Cloud9. He was thinking about,
plus worse than Liquid, obviously.
Plus Cloud9 wasn't even there. So.
But you do have a situation where teams with those issues don't actually have like a great schedule to actually improve. So what happens? How do you judge if Liquid is just catching the scene at a point where Astralis obviously going through some shit, obviously had a downturn. We had Vitality starting to pick things up. Yes. We have ENCE who was starting to crumble. You have all these other teams that were in the top 5, top 10. And yeah, you obviously can't quantify this in any way. But if it's just across 4 months, why can't you put some of that dominance on the fact that so many other teams were trying to recover and played like shit during that span?
Well, look, it was just like what you were saying earlier. Like you said, it has to be something that we've never seen before in CS. You gave all these criteria, right? And just like what SPUNJ was saying, the way that Liquid was winning all those events was sheer domination. They were manhandling every team they played against. It never felt like anybody was going to beat them at any point.
Wait, I wouldn't agree with that. I wouldn't agree with that.
I think
No. Liquid looked like the most beatable, dominant team that we'd seen in a long time. They had some very, very close games in those tournaments.
Yeah, but they still won like 86% of maps or something. That's pretty good.
I'm not trying to take it away. I'm just saying let's not act like they just ran through this tournament with no struggles, because I seem to remember some fucking
with no struggles. I said they
crazy ass 1v4 wins from Nitro on Dust 2.
You never felt like they were going to. Every team that's ever, any team that's ever been the best team ever always has huge clutches, games they could have lost that they ended up winning. That's what makes a great team. Liquid, during that time, you never felt like they were going to lose an event. During that time, you never felt like they were going to lose, and you never felt like that. And they were so incredible. And this feels weird because I feel like I'm arguing both sides, because I agree. Actually, now that they've bombed out of the major like that, bombed out quarterfinals, but still for Liquid, it's bombing out. Yeah. I think they do need to win more events now in order to solidify an era. But I think that, again, like I was saying before, the player break just came at the worst time for them. And I think that even like what you were saying earlier, Duncan, where you're still in your era, if it's like, even if you lose the final, you had to beat me to get your final. So that's still my era. If Astralis doesn't, like, I feel like that happened, just it happened in the quarterfinals instead of in the final. Because everybody knew once Astralis beat Liquid, you look at the bracket, Astralis is winning the major now. You know, it was obvious.
What about
once
this
they beat
then?
Liquid.
Why don't we transition this then? Because I guess like the obvious follow-up is kind of the topic you just brought up there, Chad, which is basically the real question is, do you think Team Liquid will be the number one team again? Will they win the next events afterwards? Because I think it's actually pretty obvious that, yeah, if they only lost the major and they win the other events, it doesn't matter. Like, they're right back on course. They just have to get more events. So do you think it happens? Because obviously the other side to this that no one thought of is, even people who imagined Astralis could win the major didn't think they'd just be 2-0 in all the series and go to the final and looking like the best team. So the real problem is, what if Astralis is going to become the best team again? So what's your take on this, Chad? Where do you come down on it?
So just having a look at it now, they're both announced to be in New York and they're both announced to be in IEM Beijing. Surprising, Astralis are going to travel there. But look, those are the places that they're going to be where they get a chance to play. And NRG are also going to be at both of these, right? So if they face each other there and they have back and forths, and like, let's say that Liquid win in New York and Astralis win in Beijing or whatever, and it might be in the semis, might be the final, whatever. That's the rivalry that we want to see. Now, whether or not that, you know, if they're back and forth, then I think it's the year is split between the two of them, right? Because we had last year, Astralis just beating Liquid. Liquid make the change. Liquid looked good for that 4-month stint. And then if it's back and forth towards the end of the year with the two play styles, then I think, you know, we have a real discussion on our hands for which team has, you know, more depth or all these bits and pieces, whether or not they can get back to the number one spot. The thing is with that team, I think that they went through being second for such a long period of time that they learned a lot from that mentally to not be second anymore. But then they had to change and learn how to be winners. Now, they won in such a spree that I think that they didn't even have time for them to catch up on that. But when you have the 3-week player break, obviously they got back on the boot camp relatively early, according to reports, which is good. There's still going to be like a downturn and everybody's looking at you. The target's on your back. When they were in that run of events, there's all those things that Jason mentioned, right? With all those teams who are missing with roster issues, this, that, and the other. We can say that about every era or every team in the past as well. But when teams had time to sit down and study them, AVANGAR, Dustin in the post-game interview said, yeah, we watched 20 Liquid demos and we just knew everything that they did. Like, I don't think they were ready for that. I don't think that was... They've come into this thinking, yeah, we'll just pick up where we left off. They had to come in almost reinventing or giving themselves a new look. And that's not where they were. So now that they've had to kick up the pants, I think that we should see them return to better form. But I don't know. I think it's too early to say.
I think if that Astralis that we saw make that run in the playoffs, if that peak Astralis is something we're going to get for the rest of 2019, I don't know if Liquid can touch them. I think Astralis's peak is way, way higher than Liquid's peak.
Why do you think
I'm so surprised by that angle though. But like, okay, expand on your point a little bit. Yeah, why do you think that? Imagining this is Astralis' peak, why would their peak be better than Liquid's? What's your reasoning for that?
I think Astralis as a team shows so much better teamwork between the players, so much better trust. I think a lot of Liquid comes down to how skilled they are individually, and they have obviously incredible team play, incredible tactics, and very good with utility. But I think that they rely a lot on the individual ability to have the confidence to take fights, and that's exactly what Astralis takes away with the way that they play the game. We've seen Astralis destroy every Opper they go up against. So, I mean, Oppers are tough against Astralis. You saw their utility usage, and I think that's going to entirely neutralize some of the individual skill. And I think what we saw at the major is one little weakness that Liquid still has is that if they don't get out to, if they don't start feeling good on an individual level, their players get a little bit afraid to take fights. If you go back and watch some of those demos, as I know some of you have done, you'll see them against in that Astralis game just shying away from battles. And if they can't regain that confidence, and again, Liquid has had the issues with the mental strength, I think that could be a real problem. And I just don't see a team that can match Astralis's best level. I don't see it out there. It hasn't been found yet. The only reason, remember, Astralis is another one of those teams coming out of the era, kind of like that Fnatic in early 2016, where no one actually beat them. You remember that Fnatic lost because Olaf, broke his hand or whatever. Now we have Astralis that nobody beat them. They actually just went into a slump and stopped going to events, and that slowly fizzled away their era. So, I mean, no one has beaten Astralis. And I don't think there's a consistent way to do it if they are the same level in the top 8 that we saw in Berlin.
The thing here is that you're using one argument to back up Astralis, which you could also use for Liquid, right? I agree with you that I think Glaive is a better in-game leader than Nitro.
Device.
Hands down. Look, if we can go, there's no in that's equivalent. I don't want to go pound for pound here. My point here is, though, you're saying that Astralis, when they fizzled out, was because of bad individual performances. The only tournament we've seen Liquid not perform in was the Major, where everybody besides OllieJ had a bad individual performance.
I didn't say that they fizzled out because of bad individual performance. I just said they fizzled out. I don't really know the reason why Astralis, but no one beat them. That's the only thing. No one has actually beat that Astralis. No one's done it yet.
But you're like, it's something that's intangible. You're talking about something that we can't actually quantify, right? We can do the eye test. We can look at numbers. We can say he didn't perform as well as what he normally did. But whether or not that's because they weren't on form, or whether or not that's because they were neutered by the utility and stuff that you're talking about, those are things which require a very in-depth look, right? So I think that the jury, like in terms of, if you're talking peak Liquid when they give zero fucks about who they're playing and they're just running over. And you got Stewie standing up and he's yelling and he's fucking telling it. They're all giving it, even Naf smiling, versus the fired up, hungry, angry Astralis who just are looking super well drilled. I think that those two teams clashing, we haven't seen. I'll agree with that sentiment.
We definitely haven't.
But if we get to see that, then we get our answer, right? That's what we all want.
Well, yeah, by the way, it's such a massive. Also, what a massive cock tease that is as well. So the whole time you're waiting for Astralis to power up, then when they actually become good is when Team Liquid has the worst event of the whole year. What the fuck?
I actually disagree with Jason a lot on like the actual discrepancies within their team. Like I think that like Astralis, like you said, they have better usage, better teamwork, whatever. I think the difference in teamwork and utility usage between Astralis and Liquid is smaller than the difference in peak skill level. Like I think Liquid, if you put both teams at their highest individual level, I think Liquid is the difference between them is way higher for Liquid in that sense than it is for the difference between their like utility and teamwork. I think Liquid has.
I'm riding and dying with Astralis's utility and teamwork over Liquid's individual skill. That's going to be the more consistent thing over time.
But Liquid has great mid-round calls and great teamwork and great utility usage. Like you're making it seem like Liquid's is like trash and Astralis is so good. Like Astralis is better, but not much. Like not much better.
Just to take Jason's side for a second, in measuring the two over a long period of time, you're going to see, in theory, more consistency out of Astralis, right?
Yeah, of course.
That should be the
better for longer. Yeah,
the fact of the matter here. And I think there's another problem that I agree with Davey. If you measured the players up, if you stood them across from each other and they looked at each other and you went, yeah, role for role or whatever, player for player, that I could make an easy argument that the guys on Liquid are individually more skilled than on the other side, but the problem is how that translates in the server. So they obviously all can't be superstars at the same time. And that's a problem that we've seen from all superstar rosters in the past. They have to be able to share. And that's something which hasn't actually paid off if we're going to look at the longevity of teams who you'd consider, so Mouse Sports had a period of time where their stars, they had their trio going off. FaZe obviously had their 4 fucking Goliaths and Carrigan throwing grenades. Like we've had star-studded teams, but they don't hang around, right? So if we're going to measure everything by the Astralis standard, then Liquid have a shitload of work to do, right? But in terms of the Counter-Strike being played today, and David, you playing a lot more recently than I was, but it feels like to me as an outsider watching in, and then even just playing just pugs and shit, that the game has completely changed. Like cerebral, slow players checking every corner. That used to be a certain player back in the day. That's now everybody. And this is why, like on the desk, we were saying things. I know it came out of Sean's mouth. It definitely came out of mine, that we could be going into the most competitive era of Counter-Strike. And we should be, in theory, other than the fact everything's going to get split apart next year. But I think that's because of this change. And the thing to tie this all back in is because of Astralis. So I guess if Liquid can shift the meta, or they can show that they're better in Astralis's version of the game, which is what we're all playing right now, then that's when we can say they're the best team. But until that happens consistently, we're left with these fucking empty words and phones.
Right, being as we're doing like basically the shadow boxing of Astralis versus Team Liquid here, I'll give my take on it, right? Because the problem is, I kind of agree with Jason's initial premise because, like he said, there's no team that was ever as good for that long with such insane consistency, always had everything at a high level. Like, about the only thing that could happen is maybe one of them had an individual underperformance, and even then they'd still usually win the tournament. So no one has done what Astralis has done, so I have to give them the edge. But the reason why I would have been so interested to see this battle, which as yet, as we point out, we haven't actually seen. We haven't seen both teams, at least from the eye test, at peak form. Is I feel like some of the factors that go in Team Liquid's favour are just counterintuitive. So, for example, when you say that, Chad, totally correct, by the way. It's the reason why I actually called that FaZe clan to not become the best team. Was exactly this reason. No one's ever done it. No one's ever been able to stack all the stars and have them all play like stars until Team Liquid. Because I tell you what, I've never seen a team in the history of Counter-Strike that could have that many star players going ham at the same time. That's the craziest part. Like, you would almost think some guy did, like, reverse engineer this squad and knew what he was looking at. He didn't. Like, I can tell you internally, a bunch of them tried to leave. Some of them even got kicked, but it all just got kept behind closed doors, as it were. And they just literally, Nitro even said this to me. He said, it is kind of mad that we just backdoored our way into the best team. Like, we didn't even try to set this team up this way. But in the end, like, that's a mad advantage. Like, the difference is all those teams you're talking about that Astralis shut someone down, they shut down one guy. They shut down Simple, or they shut down Cold Zero. They can't shut down 3 people at once. There's, like, how many players are they going to use to do that? Like, if you wanted a football analogy, you can't man mark everyone on the pitch. Like, at that point in time, that in itself is going to leave a hole. Then I'd even add in, I agree, absolutely. In terms of utility, that's actually probably the best case for Astralis being the best team ever anyway, is they basically can, like, take damage off you, blind you, push you off the map, before they've fired a bullet. That's actually so OP. I tell you what's a mad OP counterintuitive advantage to have against that, being the team that leads the least utility. Of all the great teams, who needs less utility than Team Liquid? They just roll into a site and shoot you in the head. So I even think that would even, like, average that out a little bit. Maybe it doesn't go completely in their favour. That's probably too far. But they definitely put it so they'd survive a lot better than the other teams. And then one last thing I'll throw in is, if you remember in the summer, when it didn't even matter if Team Liquid won the pistol round, they were going to kill you on that Force Spy. I'd love to see a team that could do that to Astralis, because nobody could back in the day. That's when stupid Navi with their hero buys and FaZe, none of these teams did anything with that shit when they played against the real Astralis. So, like, I don't know which way that battle goes. It's like when you have a UFC fighter that's like a great wrestler versus the great striker. You don't really know who comes out on top. There's obvious strengths for each, but I think it's not as sort of open and shut as it might appear.
I would love if both of these teams come into this next section of the calendar just playing lights out, and that's just the matchup that we have for the rest of the year. By the way,
if I actually had a choice, Jason, I would actually choose to forego any Liquid era and just have those two teams, and maybe even throw a couple more and throw in an NRG and Na'Vi. Let's just have them all go mental for the last 3 and 4 months. I'd pick that if I had a choice.
And what's crazy about Liquid's lineup is what you were saying. It's like they're the only team where you can look at their star, like where you have Twists, who's like this really passive turret type player who puts up ridiculous numbers, and then you have OllieJ, who's the aggressive, ridiculous player, and they're 2-star players playing 2 completely different roles, and then the next 2 guys below them are Naf and Stewie. Like, just 1 grade below the exact same role, though. Like, they do the exact same thing. So you have all these star players fitting in their roles perfectly, and everybody can be a star player in their specific role. That's never happened in a team before.
It's just fragile, though, right? Like, I can get behind the fact that they made it work for a period of time. I just start to think that it can be fragile because they are young. When you look at the team, they're quite young, and for them to even have found themselves in this position with this unit making things work, it's taken some big moves. Obviously, they all talk about Zeus as somebody who was good for the team when he was there, and we know that he's more of, he's definitely helping with the social side of it. That's gone now, and that's kind of taken over with Stewie's responsibility, as far as I understand. And with that in play, that's where I start to worry, because look, if you go back and you look at some of these Liquid results from when they were winning tournaments, there's games, there's like a bunch of overtime games. There's like 16-14s against Hellraisers. There's scores here which we wouldn't probably be talking about when we were talking about Astralis of the 2018 era of just wrecking everybody, right? The thing with Liquid is it's always going to be, unless they continue to innovate, which they're creative players and they can always have these quirks, it's always going to be that, can they all rock up? And I guess for me, I'm scared about how they react as a team, because Duncan just touched on a point before saying, they kind of just ended up in this way by pure accident, because the rumors are, out there about players wanting to leave and go to other teams and this, that, and the other. If they found themselves in a happy period now, but if they stay in a downturn for a long, like, I don't know, maybe the rest of the year, they'll probably change roster. I think that's probably something that we'd see happen quite quickly with Liquid, especially when you have NRG on the other side of things with like Ethan and Breeze and all these fucking names out there wrecking. So it's New York. If they don't bounce back and go to the final and play Liquid like we all hope happens, and we get the best of, because it's best of 5 now, we go back to normality. we're going to see. Like, this could be the true test. We know Vertigo is going to be in the pool. They're going to ban out Mirage. Train won't be there. We get 5 maps that they both play. This is what we want.
Go. Well, that point about Liquid being made of so many stars. I don't want to say I don't disagree in any way, but I think they got very fortunate in how their how this kind of star players they have, like not only in terms of like actual personality. Naf's obviously a big star, very reserved, but also remember like he started becoming like quote unquote a star player when he played with like Renegades for like 2 months, and he was just so dominant. That's when he became a star. OllieJ has been, a quote star in North America, but not on the world stage until they've had this run of great form. Same with like Twist. Like we've all known he's very good in North America, but they haven't had the results, and then they spent a year getting beat up by Astralis. So for a star player, like, they haven't really been in like the world eye the way that the Nikos and the Olaf Meisters and the Guardians have for the past 4 or 5 years. They haven't had that same kind of pressure. Now they do, and obviously this is where you could see some of the struggles if there is any egos grown. This is where, as Chad said, it can be fragile. It can be a little bit dangerous because they're spending a year being touted as some of the best players in the world. So this is kind of, I think, where they got very fortunate that they all kind of became stars together at the same time and had to learn how to do it by losing so much last year. And they've had a bit of a grace period. And now I think it'll be interesting to see what comes, especially if they struggle down the rest of this year.
To switch it up a bit, what about this then? Let's do the Astralis side, because there's another like set of assumptions that everyone in the community seems to have, like 5 seconds after Astralis won the semi-final against NRG and everyone knew they were going to beat AVANGAR. It seems like the entire community took this consensus, which is basically what Jason said earlier, like Astralis is back, like they're at their peak, look, they're 2-0ing people again. And it's like, I want to just challenge that for a second, because I don't get that perspective at all. Like the Astralis I saw at the major, like first of all, they weren't like pretending at those tournaments in the summer like that. They were trying their fucking hardest. They were going out absolutely ham. The reason why Pimp actually literally put his rep on the line at Cologne and said Astralis will win that tournament, which everyone forgets about now, is because he'd heard all the hype from scrims, like they're really trying now, like they're going fucking hell for leather, they're doing really well, they're at a good level again. So, okay, the team that came into the major, again, if the major was a week long, the storyline had fit, but there was the whole phase before. You remember the one where NRG literally beat them 2-0? Remember the one where Crazy almost had him on fucking Inferno. Matt Crazy had like a 14% win rate on, did beat him on DOS 2, and then went to 3 maps with them. Like, this stuff in that phase wasn't convincing at all. Then you go into the playoffs. Listen, those first 2 series, great stuff, yeah. Beat Team Liquid 2-0. Like, even if you ignore the fact that they had like a surprise pick, which obviously counts in your favour, but it's just not consistent. The Overpass game was great. That's not a map team that Astralis has been that good on recently. I've given massive props. The NRG series, I actually think, is the one that everyone sleeps on the most. Like, mate, NRG was not as far out of this series as people make out. Like, if Device doesn't do that fucking miracle round on the pistol, they already probably win train. I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. If you look at the way the gun rounds went, NRG was a better gun round team than Astralis was there. Astralis actually won their rounds on like 4 spies and stuff, and then they got that miracle start. The Overpass game, even if they win that, it would be 3 maps. So I get what you mean. Like, you can definitely do these like conditions for many teams that have won tournaments, but I didn't see it as like peak Astralis. Like, when I remember peak Astralis, they just could roll in there. They beat you on your map 16-8. Then you go to their map, which is Inferno or Nuke. They just chalk up another win on that easy, and they're through to the next round. Like, the concept of the All Astralis even saving anything is that never happened. Like, they just do whatever they do every game. They sometimes even do the same thing on Nuke, and you can't beat them. This one came with a surprise pick Vertigo, different picks every single series. All the Astralis used to just spam Inferno Nuke. Like, to me, this is quite a different Astralis. So the question for me is, like, does anyone else have any thoughts on where Astralis is at now? And more importantly, everyone, I want to get the take of, what's Astralis going to be like for the next few months? Like, do you all predict they're back to the top? Are they going to be the best team? Have they reached their peak for you? Where do you sit on this one? There's obviously a lot we can do on this. You start off, Davey. What do you think?
Yeah, no, this is the same argument I was making for Liquid as why I don't think this result actually matters that much for Liquid. Exact same argument for Astralis. This is the first event post player break. If this wasn't a major, this wouldn't even be a big deal. It just happened to be a major. That's the only reason why it's such a big deal, which fair enough, it is a major. So like I understand that. It is the most important tournament, sure. Right, exactly. So I understand why that's a thing, but in reality, this is just the first event post player break. So just because, and like you were saying, they didn't look super convincing in the Legend stage, neither did Liquid, neither did any of the favorites, to be fair. There were so many upsets through this whole event, which is what happens in BO1s after a player break. This shit's expected. So once you get into the playoffs, yes, like you said, they beat Liquid, they beat NRG, dominating in the final against AVANGAR, wasn't even close. So it's like, yeah, great, Astralis won. I don't think, just like what you were saying before, I don't think this means all of a sudden Astralis is back. Astralis number 1 again, Liquid's number 2, just like before. I don't think it's anywhere close to that. I don't think that they're going to be easily number 1 dominating like they were before at all.
I mean, I think let's not overblow the weaknesses in the legend stage, because even when Astralis last year was winning everything, they still had a few events where they were sketchy in group stages. You know, the London.
They
major,
were getting beaten best of 3s though.
Yeah. But like, I mean, you know, who cares if they're sketchy in the group stage? By the time it gets to the podium, to the trophy finishes, they're always at the top.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, I'm not too worried about that kind of stuff. I mean, it's hard to know if they're back, but I mean, if they'll keep it up after the major. But what I saw at the major was a team that, once again, really trusted each other. Great mid-round calls with Glaive. They had some innovation. The big thing was you got to see so many of their strengths. You got to see the actual preparation of this Astralis juggernaut, which we've always talked about for years. One of the most professional teams when it comes to preparing for competition. We saw them do heavy research into a direct counter pick of Liquid. I love that. I don't think that's like a discredit. I mean, obviously you showed it as a positive, which it is, but let's not say that it takes away from their level of play just because it was an obvious counter pick. Like, that's one of the strengths this team has, is the ability to just go up with a game plan overnight or over 2 nights like that during the break and just destroy the best team in the world. So I have to.
Sounds like you should be predicting the win of a whole bunch of events for the rest of the year.
I think they're going to be the dominant team for the rest of the year.
He said it.
I think they'll be. I hope that Liquid is there to challenge, and I hope that Liquid does still win events and take some trophies away from them. We have actual competition, that it's not just one team blows the other one out for 3 months and then they switch it for the next 3 months. I would hate that, but I think Astralis for the rest of 2019 will be the more dominant side.
Where do you come down on this, Chad?
You know, I love sitting on the fucking fence, Duncan.
The problem is, Chad, I know that you don't actually have a position on this. You just go between the two when you think about the reasons, don't you?
Yeah, because like there's logic behind both of them.
Yeah, of course.
The thing that keeps hitting me the most, just hear this out for a second. PGL Krakow 2017. These are the top 8 teams we had in the fucking playoffs. I'm just going to read 3 names.
Some wonky ones I remember, yeah. Big.
Gambit and Immortals were in the ground. All right. Look, face it, last year. Yeah, Astralis won it. They beat Navi. That's all we have to remember. No, we have to remember the fact that fucking Hellraisers, Big, and Complexity all made it to the top 8. Let's be honest, they shouldn't have been there. Let's look at this one. We got another one here. We have, I think this is shown as well.
Jesus Christ, I forgot the Hellraisers made the Face It playoff.
Exactly.
No, that was the worst major ever, wasn't it? That was the worst major ever. Anyway, sorry, I just got triggered. I forgot they actually made top 8. That's actually bonkers.
So the last bit here, we had AVANGAR in the grand final. We had one side of the bracket with an ENTS who clearly hadn't done any fucking preparation at all for Renegades. And then I think, if you look at this, we had Vitality who have now made roster changes, G2 making roster changes, which says to me that these teams didn't think that them at their peaks, being in the grand final of Montpellier, winning ECS, doing those kind of things, shows they had confidence in themselves.
Sure.
Now, all of this has been the same for 3 years in a row. And we're sitting here having a discussion on which of the 2 teams. We finally have 2 teams who look like they can go toe-to-toe. And there's all these different moving parts, right? Okay, well, now Astralis has shown all this stuff, so Liquid can watch and they can come up with their own shit and they can try and counter that. And we're going to have this constant fucking bullshit back and forth cycle that's going to continue because our circuit is so fucking dumb. Right? Everyone's sitting here singing the praises of an open circuit. We never get to see the
Where's he going with this? I'm getting worried down.
Well, I love the fact that you can compete in whatever tournaments you want, but I hate the fact that we're going into tournaments with different levels of preparation for all the teams, right? We're going into tournaments with different priorities for all the teams. MIBR literally went in with the priority of winning 1 game. Now, obviously, they went in to go as far as they could and win it, and that's what they tell everybody. But realistically, you just want to make sure that you're back at the next major to keep that brand position. Let's be honest about that. That's what I'd be going for, and that's why I'm not a player anymore, because, winning's fucking hard. But my point here is that the way that this has been going for all these points, like year after year, it's never been measurable. This isn't measurable. We make the fucking yardstick as we go, right? That's the way this is, but that has to change.
Stop giving them the secrets.
Fuck, Jason, I'm sorry. We just fucking make it up. I didn't bring a wizard's robe. I got a fucking lab coat in the thing.
Go on.
I thought you were supposed to be the prop guy.
He's off the fence.
The props are coming. But But
he's about to jump off the fence.
You have to have a fence prop.
The thing, no, I don't. I can't decide. I can't tell you which team's going to be better for the rest of the year. You know what? I'm going to say I want Liquid to be the best team for the rest of the year because I think that is going to be more exciting. Like that's if you want it from an entertainment standpoint, I think having Liquid versus Astralis going toe to toe and Liquid for the tail end of this year beating them, then we have like a real rivalry going on. I think that's more of an entertaining storyline. I think if we go back to the Astralis thing, and thanks for Starlight Production for throwing me under the bus during the grand final of the major, that was great.
It's all coming out now. He's had a 1 week off. It's all bubbling to the surface.
I made a tweet. You know, it was a sarcastic tweet because people think that Astralis play boring Counter-Strike, and then they fucking threw it up on the screen. But I don't even think that Astralis are boring. What I mean is, I think just for the two teams, the way that they look, Astralis are kind of painted still at a little bit of villain status. I would like to see Liquid being the better team. So if you need an answer, Duncan, I'm just going to say Liquid.
Okay. Actually, I guess I'll modify what I said before. Like, even though in theory, I guess I would choose to have them both just like, you know, I win a tournament, you win a tournament, and keep it super hype like that. Because just on paper, that feels like it should be the best. I would also completely accept both teams just go to peak form and then whoever wins, wins. I'd like to just know the answer to that as well. Basically what we discussed earlier. We never actually did get to see Prime Astralis versus Prime Team. Let's just see that for fuck's sake. That'd be pretty nice.
We all obviously want to see it. The question is, what do you think will happen? So,
sure.
Know, that's the whole point of the conversation. It's the whole point of the podcast. Get your opinions out there.
I would personally take Team Liquid to be the better team for the rest of the year.
I would too.
Oh, shit. So 3 Liquids. So 2.
Hold up.
2. Chad hasn't made his actual
I'll just say
answer
this. Yet. To me, what Astralis did at this major was legendary, but not because they were like the best team, they should win, everything made sense. No, some of the stuff didn't make sense. That's what was so amazing about it. Some of the games they won, they did have moments they looked weak, but they didn't lose them. That's what was so sick about it. To me, this was the one that they won where, like, I mean, to be fair, they obviously are like a top 3, top 4 team. That's pretty inarguable. But like, they're not the clear number 1. But the fact that they were able to 2-0 that playoffs was amazing to me. But to me, it's not like, wow, they're back, cool. Skip the last few months, they're number 1. Like, I think they're going to have troubles going forwards, man.
Their 3 major wins, they haven't let a team get more than 15 rounds on them in all the finals.
It out that it was like out of all of the 3 grand finals in a row, it averages out to be 7 rounds per match.
Yeah, I think Navi and Ents was like 15, and then...
To be fair, the grand finals were some of the worst series that they played in those playoffs, just because, again... By the way, one thing you can say about this major, and in fact, look at all the playoffs of the last majors. God bless that ESL format with that fucking brilliant group stage, which you get playoffs that make sense. You don't have people winning crazy best-of-1s all over the place, ruining the whole bracket. Like, God bless that, because we've been spoiled. Like, every tournament now is a sick format. Then you come in the major, you're like, what is this garbage? Why am I seeing this shit again? Like, we're having bad majors in 2019 just because we're doing one and done brackets where a bunch of best of 1s ruin the whole bracket. Why is that a thing? That's fucking terrible. But anyway, I got sidetracked there. So what was your actual... Did Chad basically just said Team Liquid to be the best?
I'm going with Team Liquid out of like hope of an exciting story.
Okay.
I'm being a storyteller here. But I just want to ask you this, Duncan, because you're saying like Astralis are definitely a top 4 team in the world. Who do you consider to be in that at the moment? Because for
that's
me,
what we can get into if you want. Yeah, we can do that.
I was going to say, I only see Liquid, Astralis, and NRG, right? Because you look at these other teams, like Vitality, they're changing their roster. And if
the top 10 is all dog shit. It's all dog shit.
Look, you can't say it's all dog shit, right? Because that's just, you can't just say all the competition's dog shit. But we have to, we're obviously looking at the higher standard.
The big problem is this, right, Chad? Right, bearing in mind half the rosters haven't been decided. Like there's no point doing a roster min episode because they haven't happened yet. So half of these issues might not even be interesting topics in a week. But so generally, I'm going to keep it on teams that we know about. But like, for example, this would now be a perfect time to talk about NRG, right? Because they're not changing their lineup. They already have a really good team, and potentially they can become an elite team. Do you want to talk about them?
Well, they're exciting for all those reasons, but like AVANGAR are now 4th. Obviously,
they're not. They're just ranked 4th.
This is why I say the top 10 is dog shit. Not because I think the teams themselves are dog shit, but AVANGAR is definitely going to drop way down coming up.
Yeah,
and then all the other teams: Vitality roster change, Ents roster change, Mouse Sports, who knows? Renegades cool, G2 roster change, Navi roster change, FaZe roster change.
That Blast event, though, is the reason, right? People fucking love when they read between the lines. I love doing vague tweets. But I said something along the lines of the 2 qualified teams in the grand final. That says a lot, doesn't it? What I'm implying here is that the other teams are not going into these events in form. Like, they're just not. Like,
of course not.
And saying they had 2 days practice with Sunny, I don't believe that. I would have believed you would have practiced, when he first joined the team. At some point, you would have played with him. Then you've got the G2 and Vitality. They must feel like they're imposters, right? If they had those peaks where they looked really good, but then they're making roster changes immediately.
Sure.
You've got Navi, who this was
no one knows where they're
coming.
Going. Sure.
This was a lot but now you look at all the potential there. I hate the fucking term potential when we're looking at this stuff, but we're always going to have different starting points for all these rosters because it's never around the. So in terms of looking at teams who are competitors, there's only 3 names right now, and we've already named them. It's Liquid, Astralis, and NRG. Nobody else is a competitor in my mind at the moment.
Sure, but I mean, when I say top 5, what I mean by that is like, obviously the next few tournaments will decide who the top 4 is, won't it? So like, I can't literally just say, sorry, Vitality, all your results mean nothing because you've made a roster move. Like, for all I know, maybe they come back, bang everyone out and come win the next tournament, in which case they're right back there. I take your point though. Yeah, the top 10's completely wrecked open. So let's talk about NRG then, because as I say, they're not a team we have to speculate about. We just saw them play. They will be keeping the same lineup. There's not even an obvious roster move to really do right now. So what do you like, Davey? Obviously, some of these are people you know very, very well. They literally came up with you through the scene. What do you think of the NRG squad that you saw at the major?
Yeah, I think they're the only team. Well, especially at the major. I think I did an interview with Stanislaw. Well, not really an interview, but we did an episode of Peaker's Advantage with Stanislaw came on at the last episode.
Where can we find that, Davey? If we wanted to watch that, where would we look?
Probably be in the description box to this video.
Oh yeah, you can find it in the description, or you could go to youtube.com/Peaker's Advantage. Either one. But he came on and he talked about their run at the major, and they had that like first game where they got upset in the very first game of the tournament. They lost to Dream Eaters on Overpass, and he said they pretty much just didn't even prepare for Dream Eaters. Like they just weren't ready. And I was like, well, that's kind of disappointing, but I guess okay, you weren't ready for Dream Eaters. And then after that, like to that point, they pretty much just won. They just won out.
They didn't lose any more maps after that, I believe.
Yeah, they didn't lose any more after that up until the semifinals where they lost to Astralis. So I think they looked really strong. I think on paper they're like, again, that the second team behind Liquid, where if you look at their their team on paper, they have ridiculous amounts of skill across the board, all the way down. They have a fragging in-game leader, they have an opper, they have star players in many different roles with Breeze and Ethan. Tarek, of course, experienced high fragging player. Like they're the team behind Liquid, like you said. They're that number 3 team, where they're the only other team right now where you look at that roster and their skill level and the way they play, and you think those guys are solid. Like they're a solid, going to be a top 5 team for a while.
Plus, not to forget, Tarek, of course, apparently innovated that new meta evolution of where you fire at the chest instead of the head. That was so perfect for anyone who didn't see that. What's great is this VOD, and even a week from now, it'll be out of date, because everyone will be like, what are you referring to? All I need to know is people on Reddit went way too deep on just a wacky theory and really did believe
the one
that, like,
where Astralis was purposefully...
They basically believe that they really believe, this is not a joke, Moses, people on Reddit really believe that Astralis and Tarek purposely shoot people in the chest instead of the head. They don't realize the concept of you don't always hold head height angle on a corner when they haven't come out. Like, they don't understand that concept, basically. And also, if you just use the SG, like, what if the guy comes out crouching? Like, you don't want to drag all the way down, do you? Why not just start halfway up? Like, it actually makes... But I don't even know why it was the whole thing. I was just throwing it out there as a stupid thing, because it's obviously such a ridiculous theory, isn't it?
Maybe sometimes you're just not fucking perfect and can't shoot them in the head every single time. Maybe they just pulled down and happen to be shooting in the fucking chest. Like,
anyway, the point was...
way too far into
this. It's not really... we don't need to be like them, Moses, and go ourselves. Like, and anyway, on this episode of Truth Busters, we will explore it. No, the point was to make fun of them and move on. So anyway, right, what do you think? Hey, on come on then, Moses, you boys NRG. Here's the thing. You really do. You are the guy. You're like, like lucky in life, unlucky in love, or whatever. I don't know what you're lucky in, but you are mad unlucky at picking players, because some of the players you picked to put your flag with, like, you could have taken Breezy years back. You could have taken Zerk. Like, you're picking like Ethan, Kuster, like, whoever you pick, I'd just get away from them. That's like the fucking cursed touch when you pick them. What do you think of NRG then?
That's really highlighting all the negatives that have happened in my player choosing.
That's what I try to do.
Any of the positives.
No.
Well,
exactly.
to highlight one of the positives, the old Optic team that was around that won the E-League. I always mention that Rush was the X factor of that team, where if he played well, take him to the next level. Exactly what happened there. Ethan is the same player for NRG. Ethan is the same. Oh, he's won a major, Chad. He's done it all. He's
an X factor.
He's taken his long victory lap. He's really enjoying the show.
How old is he?
It's a really good question. I don't know.
Dead now, of course.
Ethan is that player for NRG. If NRG is going to actually win events and challenge Liquid Astralis consistently, it's got to be Ethan that steps up. He's one of those players that just has the strong rifling ability. I think he's pretty similar to Breeze. He just didn't actually deliver at this major for me. My problem with NRG is they've obviously been very, very skilled for some time, but they hit a moment in every tournament that they make a deep run in where they just can't make it any further, where like the players just kind of disappear, almost like a Liquid of last year. They get to like the top 4 and their players aren't able to kind of stand up to the pressure, aren't able to actually deliver. And what scares me the most about them is, from a tactical standpoint, I don't see them outplaying anyone strategically. I don't see them outplaying Liquid. I don't see them outplaying Astralis. Not to say they're going to beat them, but the strategy and tactical side of things is not a strong suit for this team, in my opinion. I haven't noticed anything really that special out of their gameplay outside of when Breeze is dropping, 30-some kills in a loss and Cirque is dropping mid-20 kills.
So, just with that whole strategy thing, in the Astralis game on Train, where Device got the 3 kills with 3 HP, that whole scenario there, that pistol round up until those 3 kills, go back and watch that strat from NRG. That gets my dick hard. That's the shit that we're talking about. They were so thorough with their utility. It was a really well thought out pistol round. So I get, like, if we're going to go strat for strat, I think that Stan can make up strategies as well as anybody, right? In terms of maybe the mid round and moving his pieces around, I don't think he can do that as well. I just think the positions that he plays on the map don't necessarily allow him to do that. It's going to have to come from elsewhere in the team. So I can see, like, strategically in the big picture. I think in terms of
obviously he can run a pistol round. I just mean, if you're going to put a game plan together for a whole half, for a whole game, like I don't see NRG as that team with Stanislaw and Chet, and I guess Tarek would have input as well. I don't see them creating a game plan over the course of a half that you can see come to fruition the way Liquid and Astralis can. They're not there yet, and that's an area they have to develop. They don't have that kind of advantage. That's a disadvantage for them in those matchups, punching upwards.
I guess I'm a little biased, but I disagree completely. I think Stanislaw actually has the tactical ability to totally do that, especially now that if he has Tarek helping him out with mid-round calling, and like you were talking about, maybe he's not so great at mid-round calling because of the positions he plays on the maps, but he does have Tarek, who is, he's still a major winning in-game leader. And to have him as your second caller on a team is super valuable. And I think that you'll see a lot of really cool things from NRG in the next few months, as far as like tactics and strategy goes.
It's just a weird one, because I think like Stan at his like peak was obviously winning that E-League event against Astralis, right? Back in 2016. That's probably what we'd probably look at that as like one of his peak wins. Would be up there in the trophy cabinet somewhere. And I liken this team to the same that Optic roster we had back then, right? Like Breeze, you could say, put him like on par with like NAF in terms of fragging output. Rush and Ethan, as Jason was just saying, Mixwell and Cirque, Stan obviously, and then they had Tarek on that team as well. But when that team was winning at that E-League event, I remember it quite vividly that they were just running. This is obviously a lot of time has passed in Counter-Strike and the game's changed since then. But they were finding a lot of openings and then snowballing with the space that they would get. They played off each other very well. I think that the NRG roster right now can do the same, because they have the same way. Like Breeze can just walk in and kill 2 people, and then as long as everybody else plays off his information and space correctly, they're going to win that round, right? That's going to happen. But there is still a big learning curve for these players, right? I just said before that I think Liquid now have to learn how to be winners. Well, I think the same can be said for NRG, at least, making it consistently to that next step. All these things are just going to take, repetition and going through those motions time and time again. In terms of being like a contender for a long period of time, they're another young roster with these names which are going to stick around for the next 2-3 years. Right? There's no reason that Breeze is just going to drop off. He's just not going to drop off in skill. Like he might not be able to hit the same peak consistently, but he's still going to be a very good player. I don't see other people just coming out of the woodwork and, taking these guys over. So they've managed to get like, I want to say the second string, right? Of like, same when you look at the players pound for pound in terms of ability as a Liquid. So there's potential for them there to really rival for that top spot, because I was talking to, I think it was Joker Steve, and he was like, yeah, we played NRG a heap in practice. And then when they were talking about when they used to like play Astralis in tournaments, they were like, yeah, Astralis would never play us. Maybe there's something to that, maybe don't play against your biggest fucking rivals all the time.
I mean, that's something that's going to have to change in general in professional Counter-Strike. It doesn't make any sense why these teams would be constantly practicing against each other over and over, trying new things against people that they're going to run into in tournaments. It's just a matter of time before that.
I mean, the best example of that is fucking Mouse Sports, who came into the tournament were like, brilliant, we've put all this work in on Vertigo, and then all the teams that they had literally scrimmed on Vertigo got to play them on it and basically get chances at wins. Like, that's a perfect example of where, like, even if it was against worse teams, if you just practice teams that weren't at the same tournament, your edge would have stayed. Anyway, that's a side topic. And my take on the NRG one is that, like, this is actually the team I find the hardest to predict. Because the problem is I don't want to get too in love with what happened at the major. Like, if you look before the major, like, listen, they still had some components. Like, they were always playing people close. Like, even those top fours Jason's talking about, like, it's not like they were ever, like, getting smashed most of the time. These were usually pretty close games. It's just, yeah, the problem is they had that quality like Team Liquid last year, like Astralis years and years ago, where it's like, even though you shouldn't analyze the game this way, you should just look in the server at the X's and O's and who's going to get what kill. The problem is we all know the intangibles of, like, this guy always chokes at a major. Those actually tend to be more reliable than the indie game shit of how he played the last 2 months. Like, it's just a fact. So until someone does get over that hump of, like, I always lose in the semis, you pretty much can bet your house against them. Like, until it happens in a big way, and at that point, like with Liquid here, maybe they change their whole mentality and start winning everything. Until that happens, you're just stuck at that hump. So my problem is, I don't 100% know if they're ready to get over that yet. I will say, like, I know what Jason means by, like, tactically, I wouldn't put them anywhere close to Astralis' level. But with that said, like, first of all, with the skill that they've got, I don't think they need, like, that deep fucking tactical playbook. I'll also even throw in, first of all, if Stanislaw can play anywhere close to the level he was showing at the major, I don't expect him to do it consistently, but anywhere close, that is a wrinkle no one in the whole world has. Like, I don't give a fuck who you are from HLTV.org that thought Glaive was the eighth best player in the world of 2018. Was he fuck? The difference is Stanislaw, when he is fragging, is doing it like a star player would, mate. He's not just getting 2 extra kills through a smoke that your teammate commed someone's on the other side of and you spam, they got the kills. Like, all kills are not born equal. He's just shooting you in the head. Like, no one has that in the top 10 right now. So that's one factor. Then I'll throw in this factor as well, right? The most disappointing thing about NRG to me, as I alluded to before, was every time they were in a must-win round, they fucking won it. I'm not even joking. Go back and watch their games. Anytime that, like, Astralis would have, like, 13-7, like, they would win that gun round, like, that must-win gun round. So that was a massive, like, positive for me, that when your back's against the wall, you can cobble something together. But the downside is this. You know how many times they would win the must-win round and then lose to, like, Deagles or a half-buy, or you're in a 3v2 and you lose it to the 2. Like, they would also, like, be mentally weak in those spots. I will say, like, if I'm going to pick you to be a champion, that's probably the area I want you to be the strongest in, not the weakest. So, like, I'm kind of torn on this. Personally, I just see NRG at the moment as, like, maybe they can be the cool dark horse, and then it's like whoever they play at what part of the bracket, maybe they make some upsets. But I don't know if they're ready to win yet.
No, I mean, I don't think they are. Obviously, I think the top 3 for HLTV is, I think it's perfect at the moment, and I mean, I think NRG is in a great spot. I just think the experience of individuals, and I think the team aspect, I think, is really going to hurt them down the stretch of this year trying to win tournaments. I think those are the 2 areas where they can have the most improvement, is more consistency out of individuals across an entire event, and then I think, you know, a little bit more depth with tactics, because I think we're going to get to a point where you have to be able to have those kind of strategies or tactics, no matter how complex or how simple, to actually be able to win these events. Like, you need to have that wrinkle against Astralis and Liquid, and I just don't know if NRG has it yet.
Yeah, I think the top 2 are going to be pretty clear. I was just going to add on. I think the top 2 are going to be pretty clear for the rest of the year. I don't think I think NRG's great, and I think they're going to be a lot more tactical than maybe you do. But like you were saying, I don't think they're ready to overtake Liquid and Astralis. No. You know, they're not there.
Here's what I'd love to see though. Give me, like, NRG versus Astralis in, like, a quarterfinal somewhere. Mm-hmm. That's like where, like, the pressure's not too much. Like, it's still early enough in the tournament. People haven't, like, fully peaked. Like, that's where you could get an interesting fucking match.
Right.
That's where you could get the upsets.
In New York, I think. Let me double check.
I mean, I imagine there's only semis there, but, you know, whatever. Same concept.
But they're in the same group, so you could see them as, like, a progression.
Oh, they could already
match.
Play best of 3 then, yeah, exactly.
They could play a progression matches in a best of 3.
Especially because that's another factor as well that nearly always exists with those teams that keep getting stuck at the final or the semi. It's like they can beat those opponents, but they just can't do it in a final, you know. Like, if they play them in a group, like we're saying here, well, they've already done it. They already beat Astralis. So, like, it can happen. So that's why it's a sexy matchup still. Anyway, what was your question, Jason? How are we going to transition this? Like, let's do a last topic then, since it's probably about time for that. So what was it going to be?
Well, I mean, I just like the hilarity of French Counter-Strike at the moment because this might be the most French thing I've seen come out of that region. My question was going to be a very simple one, and it's just I don't know how accurate these numbers are, just the ones that were made public. Are you taking Keo for free or Shocks for 300K?
Okay, so I was actually talking about this earlier with Flom. We were streaming earlier. We were talking about it. You take Keo for free just because, like, 300K for Shocks is ridiculous. That being said, if the team really wants Shocks, you can't possibly get worse no matter who you pick up. When you look at the team's stats over the past year, it's Ziwu plus 1,300. The second guy on the team is plus 80, and that's Apex. Everybody else is either even or negative. So no matter who you pick up at this point, remember,
it's worth a shot, basically.
It's worth a fucking shot. And keep it in mind, they were the second best team in the world coming into the major. So the second best team in the world has barely anyone on the team positive over the year, and then one guy plus 1,300. No matter who you pick up, surely they're going to just go even at least. So that's why I would say you pick up Keo for free, because especially Keo.
It just I agree with you in the sense of Keo for free, because it's just like, how do you see room in a team with Apex and Shocks, right? Like, and then Ziwu having to. It just that the whole French scene right now are making, if this Nexa and Hunter thing to fucking G2 is apparently even remotely true, like obviously they would have been exploring all these options and shit. But if they're thinking of doing that, they're just going in the wrong direction, right? I tweeted it saying something like, I think the three players that you need from French Counter-Strike right now is Ziwu, obviously, Kenny S, and people are like, oh, you can't have two AWPs in a team. Are you guys fucking dumb? What do you mean you can't have two AWPs in a team? Also,
I don't know where that comes from.
Also, Ziwu is one of the best players in the world. Just like Simple, he does not have to AWP. He can rifle. He can fucking.
By the way, quick prediction for you as well, Chad. If you ever get a team with both those players in it and they both do really well with the AWP, every same pleb who told you can't have two AWPers will just say every team needs two AWPers. It's unfair. It's like you can't win against people like that.
Imagine how potent that double. Anyway, that's
insane.
But Kenny and Ziwu are the best two players right now in the French scene, and then you get fucking old mate Amanek in there as far as
those will be the top three for sure.
He's doing the in-game leading right now for G2, right? And he seems like a pretty switched on kind of guy. Those are your three. And then if you want to mess around with any names, let's not fucking keep going back to the old ones. Let's do something different. Jax, I think Jax was pretty good. I think Jax offers a lot in terms of being like an anchor or like aggressive for entry frags, but knows his lane.
Wait a minute, can I just check something? Is SPUNJ actually putting forward the position? By the way, I love it. It's fucking mad spicy. He actually thinks that the French super team is literally just G2 plus Ziwu and then one other player. Is that it?
Yeah, I would say you could get fucking Keo in there if you really want the experience of someone who's played, at a high level, and then there's your fucking team.
Well, Keo was playing with G2 today in some online games, and he was fragging, like he was top fragging.
How down the road from me, mate.
Yeah.
How do you guys rate Kiyoshima as a player? How is this guy not been on a team? Has he killed somebody that we don't know about? Does he have someone in a trunk? I don't understand how he has not been on a team.
I've basically told these stories before. I'll just say this. He has done the player equivalent of that. Like, think of things that you can do in a team that make people say, I will never play with you again. Obvious examples. Tell people you don't care about a major that's coming up. Tell people you don't give a fuck if they kick you because you're not practicing enough. Like, these are things which justifiably should haunt you. Like, it doesn't matter that 1 year later you go, hi guys, I'm back from Miami. I've just had a great trip. But you know all those problems that I had in my life that I've never addressed publicly, never apologized to anyone for, and as far as everyone could tell, put no effort into improving on, well, they're all gone because it's a year later and I want money again now. Can I have money, please? It's like, I totally get if teams are like, fuck you in your face. It's just at the moment they're not fuck you in your face because they're G2 and Vitality. They're in a bad spot relative to the talent they have. Like, Vitality, obviously, if you have Ziwu, you should have a chance at being number one. G2 should be way better than they are. Obviously, they've got, like Chad said, they've got the pieces to potentially be the best French team, but they're not. So, like, I get why you gamble on Keo, but I would say this, like, the real gamble's this. Keo's game looks like he's been there for ages. So the gamble with him is his attitude, his personality, that sort of shit. Shocks' game is maybe still gradually getting its way back, but not there yet. So the gamble with him is, will he ever reach peak form again? So either way, you're gambling, basically.
Well, the gamble with him is, will he ever reach peak form for 300K? That's the big one going on.
But I'll give you my take then. Here's my take, right? If I'm G2, obviously I'd love to have Kiyoshima. Like, beggars can't be fucking choosers. If I'm Vitality, would I choose Shocks or Keo? I would personally choose Shocks because the difference is this. Right, let's say Keo comes in and plays well. Like, Kiyoshima's never going to be a top 10 player in the world. Like, he'll be a good player, yeah. And you know what? As Davey just said, actually, if he's better than any of the Vitality players, maybe Vitality's actually a better team. Problem is, they're not the number one team from that move. Whereas the difference is, listen, I can be romantic as I want, trying to imagine a year and a half ago, Shox is going to be really good. But first of all, I guarantee you, out of all the players who aren't really good right now, he would be in my top 5 to ever get back there again. Secondly, if he gets anywhere close, you are a way better team than you are with Kiyoshima. Shox might be the most complete player to ever play Counter-Strike, any version.
He just hasn't shown anything for this entire year to show he's going to get back to that form.
Oh, I would agree. This year's been pretty bad, mate. Like, I'm not hyped for it that much myself.
Especially for 300k. Like, if you're G2 right now and you're like, 300 us? You're, for Shox? Okay, yeah, take him. You know what I mean? Like,
did you just...
What are you going to say, Jason?
Did Duncan just use Shox is in my top 5 of players who could potentially one day get back into the top 10 as a defense for his selection of Shox?
Yes.
That is some weak ass shit.
It isn't. I'm literally predicting a player that we all agree hasn't been that good for 2 years, could be a top 10 player in the world. Go on, then any of you got any bold predictions? Fuck off. All you guys do is go, hey, maybe number 2 could get to number 1 if they get a bit better. It's like fucking sound. Like, bring in the checks, everyone. They're ready to get paid. Like, I'm making actual predictions using real shit. That was real analysis as well. As I said, he's the most complete player. The thing about a player like Shox is he doesn't even have to frag out. Like, if he just gets more of his, like, fucking clutch game on, you're already a way better team with someone like that.
If you paint like just skill ceiling of the two players, then there's like there's no conversation. But if you're looking for a piece in the team, then there's a conversation. And from what I've read, obviously it's all fucking rumored shit.
Sure.
Is that Shox is not going to be there to rock up as a star. He's going to be part of the fucking pony show. He's going to be part of the, all right, well, we take Zywo out into the paddock and we show him off to everybody and we make sure that he can do his best, which they all resent, apparently, with answers from their interview.
I've got a little video on that coming soon, mate. You'll like it. I've got some shit I drudged up from the past that people are going to love, where basically, I'll never give the spoiler, the French scene has done this every point. You'll be shocked by some of the examples I'll give you. But anyway, keep going.
So, yeah, I was just going to...
Teaser just for my own content on my own YouTube channel.
But the thing is, the topic that I was thinking about a lot recently is that we're all hyped about these new kids, right? Like, we're watching them play and we're like, oh, yeah, this is amazing. And there's one thing that I notice with, like, it almost seems like a common theme with obviously all the good ones, is that the way that the game has adapted, like, to change to this point, that everything, and I touched on it before as well, is so much more like thorough. And I think that a lot of players, and I am a victim of this even during my career, is I played Source professionally. Yeah, fucking get the fucking digs in, Jason, you fucking cunt. Anyway,
wait, why is everyone attacking me in this podcast? Why? What have I done? I didn't even say a word.
You do play the victim a lot here. Everyone's been attacked in this podcast at least once. Anyway, let's continue. I think that people get stuck in their ways of when they were winning, right? Which we see this happen all the time. Like, we see Shox still go for a double AWP setup when they have like Lucky on the team who was doing the double AWPing setup stuff in the early days, or like you look at scenarios where a team like JW is a play style that you look towards. When he was at his best, it's because he could get away with unbridled aggression. Now, whether that was because of the AWP at the time or the CZ at the time, or teams weren't ready for it just based off the way the game was traditionally approached, that's what worked in the time. But now you're seeing these players having to adapt, and all of these younger players, the Zywus, the Ropses, obviously Simple, like all the names of these players who can be super dominant are so much more complete. And that's why I think all these old names, that's why I think that, like, I'm done with them, right? Because they can, definitely they can say, hey, man, this is how we set up our monitor when we get to LAN. Or they can give, like, you need a couple of the veterans in there to help calm the kids down and give them a good view. But we should be looking heavily towards the talent, right? Because they are going to produce so much more mechanically than what these older players are going to do, because they're so stuck. This is why I think FPL and all that shit is really good, is because a lot of these players play for themselves, which everyone here is going to say that's a bad thing. But it's a good thing when you're fucking Rops and you can clear every single corner on your own on B platform. When you first joined a professional team and I was watching you during Pro League and you had all this responsibility and you're just fucking wrecking everybody, and your awareness is there and your game sense is there and your understanding of communication. And it's all being bred into these kids now. That's why, like, I'm happy to give Keo a chance here as opposed to Shox, because Kyo's been fucking slumming it. He's having to relearn. We're playing with all the kids in the FPL. He's having to learn and pick up all this shit of how to just play like that. Whereas Shox is just looking at the game through his vision of his teammates around him. And that's another thing that happens. Players get caught up in, these guys are around me and this is the way to play the game. We need to keep evolving and keep changing and keep adding shit. Otherwise, it gets super stale. Long story short, get fucking Kyo.
Yeah, apparently, even though G2's using him as a stand-in, they're not actually going to fucking sign him. They're still going for this Hunter Nexus shit, even though Kyo's been absolutely destroying.
That's also
online.
though, because like, to be fair, if Vitality chooses they want him, then G2 doesn't have the choice, I imagine. Like, it sounds like Vitality are the power players in this particular scene, you know, like, unfortunately, yeah, exactly. That really is the reason. Like, in the French scene in particular, even when there are two teams that are comparable, there will always be basically one that is seen as the team everyone wants to be on, and the other one is seen as the farm team. That's just the way that their mentality works. So, as you said, to me, it's probably not even the rank. It's probably that Ziwu's the best player. Everyone wants to play with Ziwu. That's probably the logical reason, right?
If you have Ziwu, you're more likely to win events. It's just that simple. You're more likely to win. No pun intended on the simple thing, by the way.
And by the way, just to get it out there, like, I'm not going to crow massively because obviously it was tragic to see, but like, if you saw what happened to Ziwu in that quarterfinal, that's why you never tell me that someone's the new Simple. No one's a new Simple. There will never be another Simple. Like, that's what's ridiculous about someone like that. Like, listen, Ziwu's very, very good. Like, he's the closest thing I've seen. But, like, even he can't. Like, people don't seem to realise you're not supposed to do well in your first majors. You're a fucking 17, 18-year-old kid. Like, it's totally fine that you did well up until the quarters and had a couple of bad maps. Like, that's actually the normal expectation. So I get it that we want someone to be, like, one of the best players ever. But, like, even most of the GOATs don't literally come into the playoffs banging everyone's head off. Like, we're talking, like, 5 people ever maybe did that. That's how ridiculous the company we're talking about is. So...
yeah. No matter how good Ziwu is, Simple's in a league of his own, and he's going to be... I can't see a world where Ziwu overtakes him right now. Simple was way too good for way too long on such a shit team. It was fucking mind-blowing how good he was for such an extended period of time.
That's actually why, and maybe we'll do that as the last topic then. Maybe we just close up by talking a bit about Na'Vi, because even though at the moment we don't technically know the moves, even though it looks very likely it's just Guardian joins instead of Zeus, right?
That can't be real. Is that real?
It's everyone's saying it's the most likely thing to happen, and it's all.
I haven't wanted to believe it.
I don't want to believe it either, because to me it seems like, why are we going back on this one? Like, I already saw that. Like, they didn't play well together.
I've just chosen to believe it's not true. I'm not accepting it.
Guardian's in like the same boat as Shox, Shox has at least been playing better, but Guardian's year has been terrible. Like, why are people coming back with all these old stars and trying to make it work when he hasn't shown you anything worthwhile? I haven't seen anything out of Guardian this year that makes me say he's still got it in the tank. And I fucking love Guardian. I feel bad saying it, but he's had an atrocious year. And yeah, FaZe has been in a bad situation, but I have not seen any development, or as Chad just mentioned, adaptation in Guardian's gameplay. And I don't know how long.
Okay.
About it. Sorry, Chad, go ahead.
I just wanted to float the theory behind this, right? Let's just think about the players that they currently have. They have Simple and Electronic, who are two individuals who you can give an AK to, a Krieg to, whatever the fuck you want to give them, a Deagle, I don't give a fuck. And you say, go kill people. They will go and kill people. They will get you killed. Guaranteed. That's just how those two players work. You got Boomich and Flamey. Boomich obviously running in on the T side, getting some good entry work. That's great. You've got Flamey and Boomich on the CT side. You leave them as your bomb site anchors. They're good for 2. They're a safe pair of hands. You know what you're going to get out of those 2 guys. You bring in Guardian, you don't need him to be an aggressive AWPer, because if you want any aggressive AWPing done, who am I getting to fucking go aggressive with AWP? I'm saying Simple, here you go. You let him have it. To anybody out there who thinks that Simple should be the primary AWP player in Navi, I want you to give me your reason. I need you to come to me, and I need you to convince me as to why you would want to have the best Counter-Strike player to ever touch the video game restricted to doing what is occasionally a bitch roll, holding an angle. AWPers are not star players all the time.
Yeah, but I'll give you a counterpoint then, Chad.
I can too, yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you
Here's a very quick one. I'll make mine quick then. My counterpoint is this. Like, Simple doesn't use the AWP the way that AWPers do. Like, Simple can go T-side Inferno, run in like a fucking entry player and shoot you in the head with the AWP. Like, other players, not even Guardian can't do that, mate. Like, you wouldn't even want him to. Like, it's not the way that... So all I would say is this. Like, as bizarre as it sounds, to me, I don't even think of Simple as an AWPer. I just think that the AWP's the most powerful gun. He's the best player, and somehow he manages to use the most powerful gun in any scenario he wants, to be honest.
Sure, and I'm with that, right? But I think
as a role, I'm with you. I wouldn't hold him. I wouldn't have him hold one angle, obviously.
Allow him, if he wants to pick up the AWP or whatever is happening, that he can do that, right? But don't have him stuck to that. Whereas Guardian, like if you say Guardian, we want you to sit at the fucking the boost at long on overpass, we want you to hold the line, and we want you to kill somebody. He'll get you that kill. He doesn't need to be the Guardian that we remember. He doesn't need to be that star level Guardian. I think that with the rumor, if they want that, and he's also an elder statesman of the team, right? The rest of the guys are all super young. They are experienced, we know that, but they're still quite young in terms of their maturity. That's just the way it is, right? Their age. Now Guardian's older. He has experience. He's obviously been in the big finals. He just hasn't been able to pick up that many trophies, or the major trophies, of course. But the thing is, and this is the question mark for all the teams right now, it's not necessarily a question of who is the most suitable pickup. I think teams should be really slowing down the gas pedal on picking teams up. I know they have commitments and all this. They get people on trial. I don't actually mind that for now, because we have 240 whatever days now until the fucking next major. There is so much time to try everybody out.
The odds that you've got your lineup sorted now for the next major are quite unlikely.
Take your time. Like, this is why I think like Blade, if he does want to step into more hands-on with that team, can really handpick all these players, because he has handpicked everybody up until this point. He played with Simple in Flipside. He played with Electronic. He played with Flamey, and he is the one who watched all the demos, and he picked Boomich for this team. So if you're Blade at this point and you want to get Guardian in for the coming up events because you're going to get out a good workload, I think other players he'll be looking at in the CIS region, if he wants to star AWP, or if he wants somebody of that caliber. Obviously, we know the AVANGAR guys are out there, but Blade might even go something a little bit fucking off the script, right? Now, I joked during the minors about this Shiro kid, right? But this kid, from some of the clips that he's had, obviously versus low-level teams, the mechanical ability is there. So this could be a name who they could go towards. It's not going to cost them a lot of money. They're in Gambit youngsters. There's a lot of caveats there to come into this. But if we stick with the rumor of Guardian, I can see a world where that works.
Well, I just want to go back to your original point, like explain why you want Simple to be the primary opper. Because he's been the primary opper for the past year and a half and has been the most dominant Counter-Strike player in CSGO player in all of CSGO. Dominant. He's been the best player ever. He still is the best player ever. And he's doing that. Whether, like what Duncan was saying earlier, he's not necessarily a primary opper, but he's the guy where if he wants to op, he gets the op. He gets to go do what he wants with it. He gets ops whenever he wants. He gets to play how he wants. He gets to do his thing. You don't want to fuck with that. You don't want to mess with that.
You're not going to take that away, right? You don't take away.
Well, you kind of are, though, by picking up an opper. You are taking that away, because there's going to be rounds where Guardian wants the op and he's going to go for a pick.
Here's the problem, Chad. I know what you mean. Like in there's a world, right, in theory, where there's two ops, no problem. You would get one each. The problem is this: we all know Guardian's not like a monster rifler, especially not nowadays. So the problem is, if you only have one op, odds are you are going to give it to Guardian. Like, I wouldn't. I'm basically telling you, cutthroat as is, I would give it to Simple. Like, I don't give a fuck. No one gets it except Simple. But in this scenario, just logically, if you save one, you're going to give it to Guardian, because logically you can't be as good with the Deagle or a rifle, right?
The only way I see this working super well is two things. One, the exact scenario Duncan just said, that has to apply. If there's a round where Simple's like, yo, give it to me this round, Guardian, they can't be fighting like they were in the past and arguing about the op because, the problems they had before where they were disagreeing and shit. That can't happen anymore. Simple's the best player ever. He gets to do his thing. And two, if Simple is on board with this and he's actually saying, I actually want Guardian in, I want to rifle more, I don't want to op full time. If those two things are happening, then that is when it's okay. But when you have the best player ever, you let him do and play how he wants to play.
Here's the rumor that comes out like as Navi are knocked out of the tournament. This is the rumor on the ground at the major, that after the major, Navi are going to have their choice. If Simple wants to keep like being the primary AWPer, they try and get Buster. If he wants to stop being the primary AWPer, they get Jane, right? That was the rumor at the time around all this shit. Like as the major was simmering out, that was the information coming in my direction. That would have to be at some point a discussion being had with Simple about whether or not he wants to do this as the primary role, right? Now, the way you make it sound is like we're shooting 3-pointers and we're only giving the ball to Simple, right? That's not the way Counter-Strike works. Simple has even had a point where if Zeus gets legged early, he'll still even drop the AWP to Zeus to take the rifle. If we want to play system-based Counter-Strike, which the best team in the world plays, and Liquid play a system which is a little bit more brawly, but they still have a system. If Navi didn't have a system, Navi didn't even look like they had fucking strategies, right? They looked in some of their games absolutely abysmal. I don't know what they think they were doing, but it was really quite frustrating to watch, especially Dust 2. Like, it felt like they didn't even prep for it. So they're also using their players in the wrong positions, right? Like they didn't even have setups on Dust 2 that made any sense. So if they're going to have to restructure the entire way that they approach the game, which I assume they will with the new in-game leader in, and you have Blade there, who is probably one of the most systematic in-game leaders we have ever seen.
Absolutely.
All of these things point towards having a system where somebody is going to have to get the AWP and hold a line. Now, if you are telling me that you don't need an AWPer on certain maps, you can get away with that. Liquid make it work, but they also have 5 of the best aimers like in the world. So,
is the short version of this, Chad, basically Guardian's going to be world editing Flipside?
Well, I hope not, because we don't want those fucking missed shots. I'm just saying that I see a world...
A better version, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't think that it's going to be like Flipside, because I think we remember how neutered by strategy they were. It's going to be somewhere in the middle of like all of like Blade's innovation of strategies and structure mixed with the ability to brawl of simple with electronic and boomage, right? I think that, like, imagine that as your trio fucking taking an area of the map while you just have the AWPer overseeing on like fucking long and overpass. Sure. These 3 cunts are clearing out connector and toilets. You've got Flamey just watching B doing
the sad thing is... Like, yeah, I think the sad thing for me is this, because Na'Vi kept that same lineup for so long, they feel in your brain like, it's just Na'Vi. Na'Vi will always just do what they do. They'll come semis, they'll make the odd final. But what people forget is, like, even though I have no doubt Zeus is a better overall in-game lead than whoever's going to do it now, Boomich, whatever, the difference is, I could even see a world where you just make this more basic and you just are even better as a team. Like, you have more fragging power, well, you might be an even better squad.
Here's the real one.
Before you guys deep dive into this, I have to go.
So, anyway, what was your point you were going to make there, Chad? Do you remember? I was just saying basically about, like, you know, how hype it could potentially be, this new lineup, because, like, let's face it, no matter what you think of the new IGL setup, you are starting a team brand new, essentially, with simple electronic. Like, that's a fucking nice couple of players to start a team with.
Yeah, and I think that the idea wasn't the rumor originally that Boomich was going to be like groomed to be the in-game leader anyway? Like, he was in-game leading for Windstrike, so things are going to be done differently. And if we look towards positives, this isn't, obviously, we've already said how great Zeus is. We're not detracting from his career or anything along those lines. But in terms of like their demeanor, now people tell me, oh yeah, that's just the way that they always communicate, right? Like that it's and that's whatever. And speaking with Ukrainians and Russian people and stuff, they're a lot more, not standoffish, but they're a lot more to the point, right, when they talk. Sure. But still, if they can even have like half of that arguing gone, like some of the things, I wish that I had the balls to say them. Some of the things that I've heard like have been said has been translated to me by Russians or Ukrainians about like what has been said in timeouts, especially with like the coach behind them, all this kind of shit. It's just fucking wild. Like no one would want
just really disrespectful stuff, basically.
Yeah, like not fun stuff that you want to be going on in the middle of a match in a timeout for anything. So if that's gone, right, if that's out of there, we still need the confidence, right? That's one of the things that I noticed was gone at Simple in the early stages of the major. It seemed like in all of his interviews he didn't have like any confidence or any of that like Simple swagger about him. I know he'd been muted by the North American crowd to be a bit more of a bitch, but you guys did a good job on that by making him feel bad. So
hey, listen, it worked the other way as well. Like that's one of the reasons I originally told Hiko to get Simple. I said the good thing is he'll just get all the players who are pussies out your fucking team. He did both ends of the equation were held up, Chad. On the one hand, we actually groomed this creature, this wild beast from Ukraine into a fucking human being, and then on the other side of the equation, Americans had to stop actually being mad fucking pussies and learn how to go to the final ranges.
So I just wish we still had bad Simple.
I do as well. I secretly do.
It's so good. It's like just he gave no fucks. It was like the true heel that we had in Counter-Strike. Now we have people pretending to be heels because they're too good. It's like, fuck, man. If we've reached that, we're
we have like for example, the people who will trash talk is like Stewie or Smooya, and the problem with that is you're not even the best players on your team. So like it's cool. Listen, I like it when Stewie does some banter, but like it's not the same as if it was Elige who said to Simple, by the way, I'm going to fuck you up in this thing. Like that's about 10 times more.
And they're all actually friends anyways when they.
Yeah, that's true
not
as
even
well.
Real shit. Like they don't actually hate each other. You know, you can tell. You can tell, and it's kind of bullshit, kind of pussy shit.
I agree. Sadly, that just doesn't exist anymore, though. Like,
no, it doesn't.
That's actually what, like, sadly, people won't know this, but the last real rivalry like that, what actually was the Astralis versus VP one, where, like, Kirby and Taz were getting all, like, hyphy on fucking Twitter, because basically in that scenario, like, VP guys are from the old school. They believe that shit of, like, even if you're friendly to the guy at the event, like, secretly you hate that guy, he's the one who cost you that last tournament, or said that you shouldn't win, though, or whatever, 10 years ago, what you remember. That almost doesn't exist now, like, that sort of demeanor, unfortunately. That's mild-mannered.
Yeah, but that's why when you watch like a lot of the like tier 2 teams or like the cusp teams, and they're a lot more fucking getting into it, that's where we all get excited because we see all the emotion back on the line, you know. But I guess we can't have it both ways. Do we want to tie off Na'Vi here? Because I think that the roster can't get worse, right?
No, that's the problem.
That's true.
Like, the problem with this is people are going to think when you say that means we're shitting on Zeus, but like, I'm not. The problem I have with Zeus is this. Unfortunately, this might sound weird, but I actually think the last year and a half of his career when he had Simple was probably the worst time of him as an in-game leader I've ever seen. Like, I thought before that was worse. Yeah.
Some of his better individual performances, I think you could coincide with that as well. So maybe a bit of a detraction there, trying to focus more on his own game and lose.
Could be, but here's the problem, right? When you have a player as good as Simple and then you get Electronic as well, like, you are supposed to win everything then. Like, I'm sorry. Here's the thing. I've always been fair with this. This is something I've told this story before. This is one thing I said to Carrigan. When Carrigan got Olaf Meister and Guardian and had Nico back, I told him, listen, mate, I'm going to be as harsh as possible if you don't win these tournaments, because look at it logically. You should win everything. Look, you think every other IGL in the world wouldn't like to have all these players? And he basically agreed, like, yeah, you're right. If I don't win everything, I failed. So sadly, it's great to look at all the, like, listen, they still won some tournaments with Navi. They had lots of top 2s, top 4s. They made it to the final majors, but ultimately, that can't be the way you judge it, because that's how you judge a normal team. What you have to do is say you had the best player ever in his prime, and he was doing it every tournament. Right? How many tournaments did he win? Not that many, actually. So I do kind of feel like, I don't want to hate on Zeus entirely, but I think this break was very much needed. Like, I want to see these players freed from his system and start something new.
Yeah, and my whole point wasn't that Guardian like wouldn't be good as an opper. It was that if you have Simple in your team, you build around him and the way that he wants to play his game.
Sure.
So you build that system around him. You have a guy like Blade who can be like, okay, Simple wants to play like this. This is how he's going to play his best. So I think we should do this, and you can build that shit around him. If he wants to rifle more, then sure, bring in Guardian, have him be that guy you're talking about, be that opper that holds the line, does whatever, let Simple do his thing. That's all fine. But if Simple wants to be the primary opper and you're still going to choose to bring in Guardian and be like, actually, Simple, we want you to play this piece in our system, you're fucking wasting Simple.
Yeah, and that's why I just...
based on what Chad said earlier, like, logically, if you follow the point he said,
yeah, exactly.
Like, well, it was on Simple, you know, does he want Jim, which means he wants an AWP? If logically he was willing to do the move to let Guardian come, it sounds like the same question was posed to him, right? And he said, yeah, I'm fine with having him be the AWP.
I think, like, with AVANGAR, those players, obviously after Kickit did his interview and that came out and said, Navi offered me to join, and I said no. I think once that came out, you kind of have just put, if Buster or James got offered that position, you've kind of put them in, like, the weirdest position morally, right?
Oh, you'd be hated if you leave on that one, yeah.
Exactly. On one side you go, your fan base will fucking go up huge. You just joined the biggest organization in the entire region. I'm sure your salary fucking goes through the roof. Your career prospects, at least in terms of short term of what you can achieve, go up, right? Very, very quickly. In terms of if you're going to get the result or not, nobody knows. It's all a gamble. But, like, I don't see AVANGAR being better than Navi. Like,
no way.
In what world would that happen, right? Like, right now, yeah.
You know, the sad thing about that story, Chad, is because that came out right. I think that might have been the interview before the final. So I think it was after they beat Renegades and won the semis, right? That's the perfect time to say those two things in an interview. One, we lived in a boot camp house for the last 2 years. That's a fucking, like, movie storyline. And then the other angle is I even was offered by the best team ever in my region. I said no, and now we've made the final. The problem is life isn't a fucking Disney movie. So in the Disney movie, chapter 3 is you probably go and win the next major and it all worked out. Problem is, in real life, you actually made the wrong move, Kicker. I'm sorry. Like, you actually probably will one day look back and regret that you did not join Navi, because the difference is you might win the next major if you were on Navi. And I'm not hating on anyone by saying that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the thing. That's the scary prospect, right? And these are all just, like, come back to it. These are all just kids, you know, making whatever decisions they see as best. And especially from that region, right? For him to have turned down, I don't know how much the Navi players make, but I'm going to assume And I could be wrong here.
It's got to be a lot more, though. Let's be real.
Yeah, look, I would love if someone could come and say, no, they do make good money. That's great. Then I'm really happy. But like, just the thing is, you look at what happened when the Gambit guys won. If you look at the Instagram of those guys and the shit that they've done with that money, in terms of where they live, they probably won't have to lift a finger for the rest of their life, at least in a way that they won't like to, right? Fucking Hobbit opened like a cafe or some shit. Dozier has a car detailing place. He doesn't even play Counter-Strike. I haven't seen him play Counter-Strike. Maybe he plays for fun. He's got a fucking car detailing place. You don't see like these players necessarily putting themselves out there because at the moment they don't have to, right? So if Kickit or any of these guys had the opportunity to take that leap and they could have been on all these more positive things, respect from the standpoint of sticking with your bros, right?
Sure.
Bros before, but
it's a cool story.
It is. But if they become the next Gambit and in 6 months from now we're like, well, fuck, this team sucks, don't they? Like it's going to be another one of these heartbreaking stories for these players because it's hard to recover these days. It's so
right. Let's do the harsh thing. Here's what we're going to do. The last topic is the topic Chad's talking about. Well, we're just going to transition it. So it goes like this. AVANGAR just finished second. They just won Blast Moscow. Davey, right now, they're at their absolute peak as a team. The question is, where do we actually see AVANGAR? Because the key thing is, they are keeping this lineup together. They're not making the change. So they're going to get a chance to see what happens. Like in a normal world, like my day 10 years ago, the team would instantly be picked apart. Half of them are beyond Navi right now. Like they'd never get even a chance to fail the next time. But now they will, it looks like, get like a solid 6 month run at least. So what happens to them now, Davey?
Yeah, over the next 6 months, they just slowly drop down the HLTV rankings all the way down, and they become that consistent top 15, break into the top 10 every now and then team. They're not going to win like another big. They're not going to come anywhere nearly as far as they did in the last two months, where they made the final of a major by getting a really lucky bracket draw, and then they won Blast Moscow by winning a bunch of BO1s, and then beating another CIS team in the final.
Well, that's a rough way to do them, I guess.
Any disagreements, Chad?
No,
that's the problem, isn't
it? I don't think that they're in threat of being knocked outside of the top 10. Probably between.
I mean, just these two results will carry you for a while.
Yeah. Like I said, over the next 6 months, they'll slowly work their way down.
I'm with you there. It's just the thing is, if I'm looking at like how other teams are gearing up, Ents, right, in the early stages haven't looked fantastic, but I think that they'll get there. I don't think that they'll allow, like, if they have like a couple of really sketchy months, then X7 or Aerial or one of those motherfuckers is gone. And
they'll just make a move, yes, absolutely.
And probably Alexi B's back in, right? Or something like that might happen if they don't pick him up for phase. Renegades, I think that like we've seen a level from them that they might be able to, like, I don't think that their level is high. I think that their level is quite stable. I think that they're currently, according to HLTV.org, ranked 8th. I would put them probably on the cusp of the top 10, right? And that's with all these other rosters still being shit. I think that they could beat some of like these teams, but they would also still lose to the same team, and like from Sunday to Sunday kind of thing. Navi, like I said, no matter who they have, they can go pretty good. Yeah, it's just hard to see AVANGAR having longevity, right? Like, I don't know. I definitely don't see them being top where they are right now within 6 months by any means. I don't see. They'll probably go back to where they were coming into this, which was 15th.
Yeah, so 13th or 14th or something. I think. Yeah, no, that's my biggest problem. Is like I'm not even hating on them. Like they showed some progression at the major. It's just that like I don't buy that it remains. And especially here's one thing: you are never going to play teams like you played at that major. Like that's never going. Bear in mind, we're not going to have another major after a play break. That will never happen again. Like next time you can only catch those teams out of Blast Moscow. That's like, that'll be your next chance to get some players that are like, are not in shape. Teams are all bad. You've been living in a boot camp house for 2 years, going fucking ham. Like that'll never happen again. So sadly for me, I don't think they're actually a team with like big potential. In fact, the sad thing is, if you look at the core of who they have in their team, I think they've already reached their potential, which, by the way, is better than I would have expected. I never thought they'd be this fucking good. Like, these are all players I'd never heard of like 2 years ago. So fair play that they made it this far, but I personally don't think they're going to be a top team. In fact, if we're picking teams with potential, I'd take the fucking Renegades team over this AVANGAR team over the next 6 months, mate.
Yeah, I think so too, actually.
The only problem I see for Renegades is where they're based, right? And this is the fact that, like, so unfortunately for them, because their results after Katowice were so bad, right now they've dipped out of all the invites, right? They're no longer in that bubble. So they will be getting in that bubble for tournaments later in the year or early next year. That's fine. But most of those invites are already done almost for all the events. So they're going to have a hard time staying at this level. And when have we seen them at their best? When they've had extended boot camps and lots of practice against the Europeans, right? That's when we've seen them at their best. So my biggest issue for them is, hitting this top peak and then having to go back. And Liquid have been able to crack it, right? NRG have been able to crack it. We had MIBR, we had Cloud9. They were all able to still go over. So if Renegades can somehow also crack that code, then we're looking pretty good. But yeah, I think Renegades across the board, yes. But if I look at the trio right now of AVANGAR, Buster, Kicker, and Jamer, they're pretty legit. Like right now, like obviously we can look at the names they played, all that kind of shit. But I think that those three names they're legit players. Like I think they're good names to be having in that team. It's just I don't think that they have the tactical prowess or the understanding to stay where they are. That's the bigger problem.
Well, there's one of the problems right there, Chad, is like, I agree, those three players are good, but if I had to guess, those three players go ahead and for the next 6 months keep playing the same way they've been playing and just expect results to come. Whereas if you've watched Counter-Strike, what happens is every fucking IGL now is going to have gone through every AVANGAR demo for the next tournaments, and it's going to be a lot harder than... They never played Counter-Strike. This is Counter-Strike. You're about to play pro Counter-Strike. You were just playing a fun game where you are a tourist in someone else's. Like, exactly. You're just a tourist in someone else's world, and you get to go, haha, wow, beginner's luck, I won a game, this is awesome. Oh, maybe I'm one of the best. It's like, no, stick around, mate. When you're here every week and you have to play the teams every week, it gets really hard. That's one of the reasons as well, I guess, to wrap it up even, I'll say that's the reason why teams like Astralis were the gods. Because I always think the worst way to tell the story is the way every fan does, which is every team is static. They are exactly this good, and if they were bad at the next tournament, they secretly didn't show their level, and if they're twice as good at the next tournament, that was their real level. It's like, no, all of it's their level. And so if you understand that every tournament you have to be on your shit, and that every couple of tournaments you win, people are leveling up their game, scouting you, prepping for you, that's when you realize Astralis didn't just become number one and stay number one. They became number one essentially like 50 times in a row. That's how insane they were. So the problem I have is teams like AVANGAR, classically at least, maybe they can avoid this, typically don't learn that lesson for a while. In fact, usually they have to do the roster moves to figure out it was even a problem with style. They usually think it's just a player got worse, because that player gets figured out.
Yep.
Should we just leave it at that?
Yeah.
I have to add one thing.
Yeah, go on.
And this is right at the end. This is completely unrelated to everything we've been talking about. But I've been on the fucking content grind lately, as you know, and I had this idea for you because you're from the Netherlands, right?
I am now. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you live in the Netherlands. So think about this. Baking with Duncan, right? So you're from the Netherlands. You get...
Well, I'm baked.
Of course. So you do in-person interviews, but you eat edible... Oh, okay. Oh, here we go again.
So what's going on here?
Hello? We had no marijuana on the podcast? Yeah.
Oh,
no, it's fine.
Damn it. Right, there we go. That was the big boss guy, I'm afraid. So
Jesus.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
This video was kindly supported by stayfungg, Patrick Ribeiro, Alice the Alchemist, Dean Tanglis, Alexander Rao, Blunt Smoking Anus Destroyer, Dane Cuskley, JDubs, Chi Mao, NateDOhDoubleG, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, Who the Fuck is Viathan? Special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question in my monthly video AMA. Do you want teasers for my upcoming content, who the guests are going to be? Maybe you even want to take part in an online esports discussion with yours truly. Well, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today. The Patreon link is in the description box below.